So you've heard this story about Jesus today, right? This one I just told you about Jesus healing the woman and then him catching grief that he was healing on the Sabbath. Shouldn't have done that, and how frustrated he was. I think this is one of the most self-evident, silly stories in the Bible. All of us read this and go, guys, relax. Like he helped someone who was in need. Because someone was in need and Jesus did the Jesus thing and Jesus helped them. That's so obvious that what he's dealing with is a form of religious zealotry that is absolutely so hypocritical, so antiquated, so ancient. Silly. Silly, really. I mean, obviously in our society, right, we would never let someone suffer over not following the letter of the law perfectly. Obviously, people wouldn't be restricted from freedom of captivity because they didn't do everything at the right time and fill out the right paperwork. I mean, obviously, there's no way in a barbaric society that this woman who's suffering from an ailment, the cure to that ailment is literally right there, and someone's like, well, no. Not today. Not all the rules were followed. The boxes weren't all checked. You can't have that healing today. You don't need to wait. Guys, you get the joke I'm making here, right? This is our reality too. This is our same situation. People suffer needlessly because of what? The rules. Then we say stuff like, well, I didn't make the rules. I didn't make them. So take it upstairs. We keep people from experiencing freedom, wholeness, restoration because the paperwork's not filled out, because they didn't follow the letter to the law as is interpreted by someone. I think back then, it's a little more pointed and a little more obvious because back then, if you think the social conventions of that time were really ones you were conforming to that were very localized. The way you managed your social conventions was really about managing your honor. It was an honor culture, shame and honor culture. And the way you showed people that you were honorable was how well you kept to the social conventions. Your reputation meant everything, defined who you were. Think about it. If you were shrewd in your business dealings then, do you think people would be unaware of that in your community? You don't have like a client across the country that you talk to on the phone in private. These are people you did life with. If people knew you were shrewd in your dealings, dishonest, you could bet the neighborhood would know. They'd know if you followed the rules or didn't. People you dealt with who were handling your accounts. There was lots of ways that people would figure out that you were a person who was honorable or dishonorable. Because these were the people you attended worship with. These are people who prayed for you when you were sick, who provided for you. The most scary thing was most everybody also knew all your family business. They could hear it literally from the street, likely. So you had to manage this. Everything was about your identity, your religion, your life, your work. All of it was combined. And there was this huge expectation that, especially when it came to the religious law, if you meant for anyone to see you as faithful, you would keep the social contract. Do what it says. Know that you're trustworthy. Keep the faith. That's how you live. Faith and life were integrated. So Jesus knew this. And that's why I think Jesus really had to illuminate, sometimes this can be really hypocritical what you're doing. You're literally putting this sort of reputation, this following the letter of the law perfectly above doing what is right, above doing what is good. You are so observant to this law, you are oblivious to the needs of your neighbor. He says, so the Sabbath I love this example. Who on the Sabbath wouldn't untie their ox or donkey and give them water? What are you going to do? I forgot to take them in on Friday night before the sun went down. Looks like they're out all day Saturday. No. He says, you know this practically speaking, so how do you do something decent for someone who's in need? He names that hypocrisy, and it's beautiful. But I think for us, it might be a little more challenging to see. We live with religion, work, family, our political identity, compartmentalized, private. Each one to their own. If you think of all the ways that we adjust our values, our appearance, our image, our aesthetic for presence of some practice values in this specific realm that we are seen in. We have a digital presence, right? Some of you have social media, right? You don't want to share too much. You don't want to brag or nothing. But you also don't want people to think you're having a hard time, God forbid. Or you really want them to know you're having a hard time. There's this managing of our appearance, of our expectations. Then I imagine, think of the way we want to be seen by people we work with. Peers, people who work for us, people who we work for. How do we want to be seen? Then we have our professional identity amongst peers. You want them to know you're doing a pretty good job. You want them to know you're doing all right, even if you're not. God forbid. You have the family image. It's where that term, keeping up with the Joneses, a nasty thing, a reality of so many of, I want people to think I'm doing all right. I don't want people to think I'm falling behind. And then you have your religious affiliation. What you claim is your faith. Some people say they're faithful, and some people say, oh, they're not of the true faith. And you want to manage that, you know? I'd argue that culturally we have a problem. We don't have this issue, I think, culturally, and that might be the problem, is we don't have an issue if our faith says we are gracious, generous, loving, kind, accepting. But I don't necessarily want that to be my professional vision, that I'm not, I can't always be gracious, I can't always be friendly or kind. I sometimes have to put profits ahead of people for my work. And everyone goes, well, it's just the way it is. Sometimes you have to put convention over our compassion in this realm. I think of how I do that. I think of how busy and frazzled things become, and sometimes I think it's just easier to manage expectations set by other people. Rather than wrestle with obligations, wrestle with my choices, confronted with a true deep value I hold, sometimes it's just easier to meet the world's expectations. I'm guilty of this. I think, this is not a hill I'm willing to die on. I don't want to disrupt my schedule, my many balls I have in the air while I'm juggling. This is not something I want to do. This isn't logically ideal to me, personally, professionally, financially, you name it. Sometimes I see a challenge or a conflict with my value, and I'm just not ready to tackle it right now. And what that does is every day that moves me towards apathy, towards a resignation, an indifference, towards something I recognize is important. I'm turning 40 in October, guys. If you want to feel old, when I was in high school and middle school, that's when Harry Potter was just popping off. That's when that book was like huge. And I have this line that just stuck to me when I was a kid. I loved it. It was said by Dumbledore. What a wise old man he was in those books. He said, there comes a time where we will have to make a decision between doing what is easy and doing what is right. Dumbledore. I told the story when I was a kid of a friend of mine I had. I grew up in Southwest Florida. No offense to our older disciples here. There are a lot of older disciples in Florida. So there was this kid that moved on my block, and I was like, yes, finally, someone to play with. And I was really happy, but then like there was this day, he was just like being so mean to his dog. That sort of value just broke my heart. Couldn't stand it. It was a falling out, it felt like. I think there are many things in this world that we can sometimes put ahead of our compassion. We can say, see how our neighbor is treated. And we can say, well, I mean, that's just how the world works. I didn't make the rules. We can say it's convention, it's the norm. In this story today, the people know the rule of the Sabbath. You don't do stuff on the Sabbath. You can't do it. I didn't make the rules. Them's are the rules. You can't heal somebody. And Jesus says, this woman's been afflicted for 18 years. 18 years. Should we wait because the rules say we can't do this today? Should Jesus refrain from setting her free? Or should Jesus just do the ding-dang thing? Absolutely he should. He points out she has suffered long enough. To have her wait just a single moment is wrong when she can experience freedom now. Dr. Martin Luther King, in his letter from a Birmingham jail, confronted this specific issue when someone said, Bud, I love what you're doing. This civil rights thing, love it. You might want to slow down. People are getting a little fussy. Yeah. And he goes, the long arc of history bends towards justice, Bud. In time, things will come around. Just wait. Calm down. It's too fast. King said that broke his heart. This convention to slow down, to wait for it, is one that comes from prioritizing in peace and quiet, prioritizing quiet over peace. Prioritizing the comfort of others at the expense of another who's been hurt for years. Just slow down. It'll come with time. Folks, there are people who are hungry now. There are people who are suffering now. They suffer prejudice. They suffer unfair treatment based on where they're from, based on their birthplace, based on sexual orientation, race, you name it. There is something where they are experiencing this pain. And I would say we stand as an absolute pillar of an alternate story as the church. That's what Jesus is getting to be a Jesus follower. We are meant to connect all people. And all means, I love it. Y'all get it? When the world tells you you need to make sure you don't make a scene, a living faith really doesn't mind a scene at all, because it especially doesn't mind when someone is suffering because of our inaction. See, Jesus people don't prioritize convention over compassion. Jesus people see a world where all are fed. Your kingdom come. All are welcome. Your will be done. All are treated as they are, made in the image of God, worthy of love and respect. Now, as it will be in heaven. Faith isn't something we do on Sundays. It's who we are. There's a book by Reverend Rick Barger, and it said one time when he was at church, he had some visitors visiting church, first-time people, and he goes, hey, how are you? And they go, oh, good. We're doing pretty good. And they started doing that thing that we all do, making sure everyone knows they are professionally doing pretty great. Family-wise, excelling. They are doing so good as a family. And you know what? They're now looking for that religious identity. And they're like, you know what? We're just looking for a church to go to because we're looking for the icing on the cake. He said, well, this might not be the church for you then. Which is surprising, right? A pastor would say that, but he says, well, it's because we're not the icing. We're the cake. Your faith is who you are, not something you can compartmentalize to Sunday activities. A service project on Wednesday. It's how you live and breathe. It's who we are. This Jesus thing isn't something we only do here. It's how we live, and it's how the kingdom, Jesus instructs us, will spread. For that I say thanks be to God for a faith that never prioritizes anything over love. That doesn't prioritize anything over compassion, over care, over healing, over hope. Hope that we experience in the empty tomb of Jesus Christ. For that I say, amen. Amen.